As Donald Trump goes into his second tenure as the President of the United States, he has enacted several policies, some of which have been quite controversial, while others were applauded for. But one of the biggest policy changes that Trump has done so far is that he announced tariffs. He announced tariffs on countries, goods, and services. One of these tariffs was directed towards none other than the automotive industry. Trump has imposed, as of the time of writing, 25% on vehicles imported into the United States. The reason? Well, as many observers have always noted, it is because of Trump's America First economic philosophy. This ideology emphasizes the importance of domestic manufacturing and aims to reduce America's reliance on foreign imports. This stems from the fact that if we were to graph out the automotive market share in the United States for 2024, we get to see that several non-domestic car makers are amongst the top list. Here in the graph, you can see that Asian car brands like Toyota, Hyundai, and Honda are in the top 5. Likewise, across the entire list, several other brands from Europe are on the list like Volkswagen, Stellantis, BMW, and so on. The shares that these foreign car brands hold are significant, and it is partly why Trump believes that the American automotive industry needs stronger protection. But this graph is lacking a particular car brand, or rather a particular country, and that is China. China, over the past few years, has emerged to be a leading producer of cars, specifically electric cars. Here's a graph on the global battery electric vehicle market share in 2023. Here you can see that the largest in the list is Tesla, but that company is the sole American company on the list. You can see that the 3 companies that followed Tesla are all Chinese car brands, and together they have a share that surpasses Tesla by far. What this basically means is that China is quickly becoming the dominant force in the global electric vehicle (EV) market, not just as a manufacturing hub, but also as a global exporter. Companies like BYD, NIO, and XPeng are no longer just local players. They are now competing head-to-head with Tesla in markets across Europe, Asia, and even making initial inroads into the American market. But here's the thing. Despite the fact that they have a massive global share, Chinese cars aren't actually being sold in America. A couple of car brands like NIO have announced their intentions to sell, while other brands like Polestar, which is a Chinese-manufactured vehicle available in the US, is the only full electric model. But that might be because it is affiliated with Volvo. The major Chinese car brands like BYD still aren't present in the US as of the time of writing. So, why is this the case? Why aren't they being sold in the American market? The answer is simple, and that is because of the US government, which is actively keeping them out. As we mentioned earlier, Trump had enacted tariffs on automotive imports in 2025. But the US government has actually placed import tariffs on Chinese cars as of 2018, which was Trump's first tenure as president. Back then, Trump had already initiated a 27.5% import tariffs on Chinese-made vehicles. The Biden administration even continued these tariffs on Chinese cars. Now, do mind that 27.5% is massive. For the most part, however, Chinese cars are cheap. They are cheaper than Tesla. For instance, a report published by the US International Trade Commission said that the average unit value of Chinese EV exports are worth $23,100 for 2023. That may seem a lot, but if you compare it to the prices of Tesla models and the overall EV market, the cost advantage of Chinese EVs becomes evident. For context, in 2023, the starting price for a Tesla Model 3 was approximately $40,380, and the average transaction price for electric cars in the US was around $55,273. This substantial price difference highlights the affordability of Chinese EVs compared to their American counterparts. And even if you were to add the 27.5% tariffs on Chinese cars, then that $23,100 price tag would rise to around $29,482. That's still significantly cheaper than many EVs sold in the US, including Tesla's entry-level Model 3, which starts at over $40,000 before incentives. And again, the reason for the limited presence of Chinese cars in the US is likewise because of the American government. And that is what we want to understand from today's video. Why is the American government limiting cheap Chinese cars into the United States? The reason here is varied, but the most important one that many policymakers and local automotive companies have always voiced out is all because of the price tag. As we mentioned earlier, Chinese cars are cheap, very cheap, when you compare them to American models. This is largely due to China's lower labor costs, massive scale, and heavy state subsidies. If we were to graph out the labor costs of China, we get to see that as of 2023, China's average yearly wages stood at just 121,000 Chinese yuan, which is about $16,700. This is significantly lower than the average wages in the United States, where the median annual income for full-time workers hovers around $58,000. Likewise, it is also well known that the Chinese government has provided billions of dollars in subsidies to the electric vehicle industry. Here's a graph on the total industrial policy spending for China's EV sector from 2009 to 2023. Here, you can see that Chinese government support cumulatively totaled over $230.9 billion. That's an insane amount, and it would definitely help them create competitive and cheap electric vehicles. Due to this, industry observers warn that an influx of cheap Chinese cars could undercut US manufacturers, leading to factory closures and layoffs. To many, it is an economic threat. The auto industry is a major employer and includes unionized jobs that pay middle-class wages in the Midwest. Neither companies nor unions want to be steamrolled by subsidized competition. As one policy group put it, the introduction of cheap Chinese autos could end up being an extinction-level event for the US auto sector. You can imagine how Donald Trump sees all of these. They are a threat, not just to American companies, but to American jobs, American pride, and American power. Hence, it is why he initiated the tariffs in the first place back in 2018, which is also why Biden had continued them. And that's the important support that you need to understand. It's the fact that the Biden administration and the Trump administration may have seemed to both agree that tariffs on Chinese cars should be put in place. According to several news reports, there is broad support in Washington, D.C. for measures that protect American industry from Chinese competition. Tariffs on Chinese goods, including cars, are popular with many voters across the political spectrum, who view them as leveling the playing field or pushing back against China's trade policies. No US leader wants to be seen as soft if that means American factories might close. This political calculus has led both Republican and Democratic administrations to maintain or escalate trade barriers against Chinese vehicles. For example, in 2023, a bipartisan group of lawmakers urged the US trade representative to boost tariffs on Chinese cars, warning of a coming wave of Chinese vehicle exports via other countries like Mexico. Around the same time, Senator Sherrod Brown, DOH, wrote to President Biden calling Chinese EVs an existential threat to the US auto industry and urging an import ban now. Brown accused China of illegal subsidies and government-backed cheating that put Ohio auto jobs at risk. Such rhetoric shows the strong political incentive to keep Chinese cars out, irrespective of free market theory. Even climate advocacy groups, usually pro-EV, have made a surprising argument in favor of maintaining tariffs, essentially to buy time for US automakers to scale up EV production, rather than being wiped out by a sudden price shock. Now, before we end the video, we must also understand how America is keeping them out. Tariffs are one part of the story. The 27.5% are applied to all Chinese-made vehicles, and that means they are applied whether they are an electric car, a Chinese brand, or even American automakers manufacturing in China. So it is not just the electric cars that the US does not want in their country. It's basically all cars that are manufactured in China, which may be sold to the American market. But then again, as we just mentioned, is this really the only reason why Chinese car brands are not entering the US market? One other reason one can view this is through Trump's threats. Trump at times floated going further, even threatening 100% tariffs on Chinese cars to make them unsellable in America. While that extreme didn't materialize in his term, the message was clear. Chinese auto exports were not welcome. Then there's also the Biden administration. President Biden actually doubled down with even tougher measures targeting EVs specifically. In late 2023, reports emerged that the White House was considering quadrupling the tariff on Chinese EVs, raising it from 25% to 100%, on top of the base 2.5%. This took effect in 2024. An updated Section 301 tariff policy raised duties on Chinese-made electric cars to 102.5% total. In other words, any electric vehicle imported from China would face essentially double cost due to tariffs, pricing it out of the market. By May 2024, the US tariff update was formally announced, confirming the EV-specific 100% tariff alongside other tech measures. For gasoline vehicles, the rate remained at 27.5%. So interestingly, only EVs and related components got the massive 102.5% duty. So, as you can see, if we were to use the average unit value of Chinese EV cars of $23,100 and add the 102.5% duty, then it would actually bring the total price of that car to around $46,800. This would easily put it in the same price range as a Tesla Model 3 or even a Ford Mustang Mach-E. In other words, the US government, by design, has successfully neutralized the pricing advantage of Chinese EVs through tariffs alone. But anyway, do let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.